Welcome back, my friends. Today I am going to show you how to change out those broken or old smoke detectors. I'm also going to go over how to choose the right smoke detector, the different types of smoke detectors, and proper placement for them. We're going to do all that here on The Walker's Way. Hi, this is Brian with Walker's General Services in Las Vegas, where I show you step-by-step how you can do repairs around your house, whether you're a novice or a more seasoned DIYer. Now, changing out a hardwired smoke detector is a very simple project you can easily do yourself, even if you're hesitant about dealing with anything electrical. In fact, this is probably the easiest way to get comfortable working with electrical circuits in your house. Now, when I say hardwired, I'm talking about where the smoke detector is wired into your home's electrical circuit. But what if you want to add some smoke detectors in bedrooms, but let's say there's no electrical wiring in them? Well, later on in this video, I'll go over how and where to install smoke detectors that don't require electrical wiring. Now, if you already have a smoke detector and just need the nuts and bolts on how to change it out, you can skip ahead to the installation part at the timestamp listed below here. Before that, I'm going to take a few minutes and go over the what's, whys, and how's of smoke detectors, which may help you decide on the smoke detector you need. Now, why do you need to replace your existing smoke detectors? Well, there are a few reasons. One, they're no longer working. Two, they're physically broken. Three, they're missing. Or four, they've just gotten too old. Well, obviously you can tell if it's broken or missing, but how do you know if they're too old or if they're not working properly? Well, for age, it's recommended to replace smoke detectors every 8 to 10 years, even if you think they're working fine. And to find out how old a smoke detector is, you can look on the back to see the date it was manufactured. Then, with a little elementary school math, you can figure out its age. Now, to test to see if it's working properly, just click the link here at the top to see where I go through how to test a smoke detector. And just so you know, it's not simply by pushing that little button to see if it screeches. Now, which smoke detector do you need? Now, as you can see, there is a plenitude of units available. Now, for you plumbers out there, plenitude means abundance. But there's no need to break the bank, especially if you're replacing all the units in your house. Now, you can easily spend $80 for a smoke detector, and if you have to replace 6 of them, that's nearly $500. And if you're paying someone to do it, you can easily double that cost. Now, does one that costs $80 last any longer than one that costs $15? No. They all have an 8 to 10 year recommended lifespan. Now, there are 3 types of smoke detectors: ionization, photoelectric, and then a combination of both. The photoelectric alarms are generally more responsive to smoking, smoldering fires, such as you'd get from a cigarette. An ionization alarm is generally more responsive to flaming fires, where you can see the flame, and those also tend to be a little less expensive than the photoelectric ones. Now, is any of them better than the other? Well, it all depends on where you're using it and what type of fire you can expect. But for bedrooms, a dual sensor unit provides the best protection. Now, where do smoke detectors need to be installed? Well, since I'm talking about hardwired units, you really don't have much of an option. You'll install them where the electrical box is located. But later on, when I go over non-hardwired units, or if you're remodeling and want to add some additional hardwired ones, I'll talk about locations. And for budget-friendly units, these are my top 2 picks. Now, if you need up to 4 units, this 4-pack by Kitty will cost you under $14 per smoke detector. If you need more than 4, I like this 6-pack, also by Kitty, because 1, they're right around $10 a unit, and that's just a phenomenal value. And 2, you can change the backup battery without taking down the smoke detector. Now, most smoke detectors seem to have the door for the battery on the back, so you have to take the smoke detector down to replace the battery. But these ones have a door on the front that pops open just by pressing it. Then just slide the old battery out, the new one in, and push the door closed. It doesn't get any easier than that. And yes, you do need to replace the battery at a minimum once per year. And the easier it is to do, the more likely you'll actually do it. Now, there are some units that have a sealed battery that will last 10 years, so you never have to change it out. But like everything else, the more bells and whistles, the higher the price tag. But then again, If you're the kind that will never change the battery, then the extra cost may be best for you. Now later on, I'm going to give you my top 3 recommendations when installing smoke detectors. But first of all, do hardwired smoke detectors install the same way? Well, pretty much. Most will have a base plate that attaches to the electrical box, and then the smoke detector attaches to the base plate. They're not universal, so when you change out the smoke detector, you'll need to change out the base plate also. Unless you get the same type, then you may be able to use the existing base plate. As far as wiring goes, they all wire the same. You have a hot lead, a neutral lead, and if yours are interconnected, you'll have a third wire, usually red. I'll go over the interconnected thing shortly. Okay, now that you've decided on a smoke detector, let's jump into how to install it. The first thing to do whenever you're working on electricity is turn off the power at the breaker to the fixture you're working on. Whenever I'm working on an electrical circuit or fixture and I had to turn off a breaker, I place a piece of electrical tape over the breaker labeled "Do Not Turn On." This is in the event that someone else in the house goes to turn something on and they find out there's no power. So they go check the breakers and think it's tripped, not knowing you're working on something, and they flip it back on and you end up getting electrocuted. So it's just an added level of security. Okay, now the power's off. But what if your breaker isn't labeled like this one and you don't have a fancy electrical tester? Well, then what? So the only way I recommend is to pick yourself up one of these electrical testers at your local hardware store. You can usually find one for around $20, which is still a lot less than paying an electrician to install your smoke detectors. Plus, if you're truly a DIYer, you'll be using it for all kinds of other projects in the future. Once your power's off, it's time to change out your smoke detector. But before you climb up on that ladder, if you like the content I'm putting out there, take your finger and tap that thumbs up like button. I really appreciate it. First, remove the smoke detector from the base plate. Most will just need a slight turn to release them. There are some that have a little locking pin on the side. You may have to remove that to get the unit to turn. Then unplug the connector on the back of the smoke detector. Normally you can just squeeze in the sides and wiggle it off. At this point, now that the wires are exposed, you'll want to verify that the power is off. Now remove the base plate. It will be held on with 2 screws. You don't need to remove the screws entirely, just a few turns are sufficient. Then just turn the base plate so the holes line up with the screws and remove it. Now you can pull the wires out of the box until you see the connections. At a minimum, you'll have a black wire and a white wire coming out of the electrical box. If yours are interconnected, you'll have a third wire, normally red, but I've seen them yellow also. Go ahead and remove the wire nuts on all the connections and remove the pigtail plug. Now, do you need to replace that plug also? Well, if you're changing out the smoke detector because of its age, then yes, change out the plug also. If you're replacing the smoke detector because it's faulty or broken and it's fairly new and it's the same brand and takes the same plug, then you can keep the existing plug in place. But I always recommend replacing the plug no matter what. Now you may have multiple wires of each color coming out of your box. That's fine. That's because you have an incoming power line and then you have other lines that go out to the next smoke detector, light, etc. Now the last smoke detector in the circuit will only have 1 wire of each color in the box. Now take your new plug pigtail and connect it to the matching wires in the box. Black to black, white to white, etc. Just make sure all the ends are flush with each other and install the wire nut. And tighten the nut so all the wires are secure. Then give a gentle tug on the wires just to make sure they're all securely fastened. Now if you have that third wire in the box, you'll connect that to your red wire coming out of your new smoke detector. The red wire on your smoke detector will probably have a little cap on the end. That's because not all homes are wired for interconnected smoke alarms. In that case, you'll leave the cap on the red wire and don't connect it to anything. So what are interconnected smoke detectors? What this does, it connects all the smoke detectors together. So if one goes off, they all go off. And this is great if you sleep with your door closed at night and the fire starts in another area of the house, and so you may not hear that smoke detector. So they all go off, now you'll hear it. Now if your home is wired to interconnect the smoke detectors, then you must install and connect all new smoke detectors as such. One thing I do is I tape my electrical connections. Some areas it may be required by your local code to tape all electrical connections. It's not here, but I do it anyway, because at Woggers, we don't just do it right, we do it better. Just make sure to flag the end of the tape. That's where you take the tape and fold it over on itself. That way when you wrap it around, you have that flag at the end, it won't adhere to the tape, so you have something to grab onto if you ever need to remove the tape. You'll really appreciate that if you've ever had a roll of tape and the end got stuck to the roll and you're kind of fidgeting around trying to find the end and trying to get it loose again. So this will cure that. That is my first tip in doing a professional job. Then carefully tuck your wires back up into the box, leaving the plug hanging out. Now make sure you tuck them up cleanly and far enough so that there is a little room between the wires and the hole in the base plate, because you need a little room for the plug and excess wires on the plug to tuck up in there when you attach the smoke detector. When you place your base plate over the screws, you'll notice there are several different hole patterns. That's because not all the electrical boxes are the same. Just line up the holes that match the spacing between your screws, then twist it to lock it in place. And be careful, do not over-tighten these screws. These base plates are just plastic and usually pretty thin at where the screws go, so you don't want to break through the plate. Just go enough until the plate is secure to the ceiling or wall. Once the plate starts to bend inward at the screws, it means you're going too far. Whoa! Wow! Hey, and that brings me to pro tip number 2. Use the proper screws. Now, most of the time I see drywall or flathead wood screws used to hold the plates on. Now, those screws have a bevel, kind of bevel down at the tip, which kind of acts like a drill when tightening them, which causes them to break through the base plates. Instead, you should be using round head screws, which are flat, not beveled where the head meets the base plate. So rather than trying to wedge through the plate, it actually pushes against the plate instead, giving a more secure method of attachment. All right, let's get back into it. This is just before attaching the base plate, where I swapped out the drywall screws for round head screws. And yes, I do practice what I preach. Then insert the plug into the smoke detector on the back and make sure it's fully inserted. Now, before you affix the smoke detector to the base plate, take a Sharpie and write the date on the back of the smoke detector. It'll help you in the future to know when you installed it, especially if you're not replacing them all at the same time, then you'll know which one was installed when. Also, if it has more than one button, say a test button and a hush button, mark the test button also, and I'll tell you why shortly. Then place your new smoke detector up onto the base plate, being careful to feed any loose wires and the plug up into the hole in the base plate. It'll usually have some tabs or something to line up the base plate and the smoke detector. Once they're lined up, then you just twist the smoke detector to lock it into place. Okay, that's one down. Now move on to the next unit and do it one by one until you've changed them all out. Now, if you change them all, use all the same brand and type. If you're not changing them all out, and if they're interconnected, make sure the new ones are the same brand as the others. Sometimes different types and brands aren't compatible with each other. Once you've changed them out, don't forget to turn your breaker back on. If you don't, then the smoke detectors will just be running off that backup battery, which will deplete pretty quickly. Then you're going to have that 3 a.m. annoying chirping sound that you hate. Once you have the power back on, press and hold the test button until you set it off. This helps reset the unit. I've had many that give that annoying chirping noise like it has a low battery if it hasn't been activated like this. And we all know that annoying chirping is always around 3 in the morning on a unit that's on the highest ceiling in the house or the one right over your bed. Now, if your units are interconnected, you should hear all the other units in the house go off when you do this test. So that's also a good way to determine if yours are interconnected before you ever start. So if you want to know if your units are interconnected, press and hold the test button on one of the units, and if they all go off, then you know they're interconnected. Now, whether you're listening to the NFPA or the manufacturer of the smoke detector, at a minimum they say you should be checking your smoke detectors at least once a month. But you know, and I know, that if you got to drag out a ladder every month, set it up under every smoke detector, climb that ladder to push that test button, you're not going to do it. So I came up with a new invention so you'll never have to climb a ladder again to test a smoke detector. This is a Woggers original, patent pending stick. Not just any stick, this is a Waugers patent pending stick. It's got a little foam pad there on the end, you know, those little pads that you put on the cabinet doors, keep them from slamming shut. That'll keep this Waugers stick from slipping off that test button when you push it. So all you need is one long enough to reach the tallest smoke detector in your house. You're going to walk around underneath each smoke detector and push it until it sounds off. So this is where that little X or circle or marker you made on that test button like I showed you earlier comes in handy. Because when that thing's 10 feet above you and you got two buttons, are you going to remember which one to push? Now you do. All right, if you need one of these, contact me, Waugers Original, patent pending. I'll make you a great deal. As you can see, this is something that's very simple to do and will save you a ton of money that you would normally pay to an electrician. So besides smoke detectors, there are carbon monoxide detectors and combination smoke CO detectors. If you have any fuel burning equipment in your house, such as a gas stove, furnace, water heater, fireplace, etc. that run on gas, then you really should have a carbon monoxide detector on each level of your house. If you just have a one-story house, place it in the hall outside the bedrooms. Now the combo units are great because it installs the same way I just showed you for a smoke detector, but it will also detect carbon monoxide. Just replace that smoke detector in the hallway with a combination smoke CO detector. Now earlier I mentioned what to do if your house isn't wired for hardwired smoke detectors. And unless you have a really old house, you probably have at least one or two hardwired smoke detectors. Usually in the hall by the bedrooms and maybe one in the family room. But your bedrooms may not be wired depending on the age of your house. But have no fear, because you can still install smoke detectors in your bedrooms, which I highly recommend, and especially if it's a rental property. Best to provide that additional level of safety. Do you really want to have a tenant injured or killed in a fire because you didn't install them? Also, your local code may require them in a rental unit. Now you can get a 3-pack with a 10-year battery for around $55. That's a pretty cheap peace of mind insurance against a lawsuit. And since they have a 10-year battery, you don't have to worry about them once they're installed. Install one in each bedroom on the ceiling about 2 to 3 feet in from the doorway and away from any HVAC vent or drafts. If the room has a sloped ceiling or an angled ceiling, install it between 4 inches and 3 feet from the top of the ceiling. Don't install it within that first 4 inches. I don't know why, but that's what they say. And then you don't want it more than 3 feet down. Okay? Now the battery powered units, they attach to just 2 screws, which come with the smoke detector, along with the little plastic anchors. So you can install them in just a matter of a few minutes. Now, besides in the bedrooms, one should be installed in any hallway within about 10 feet of any bedroom, with 6 feet being preferred. Now, depending on how your bedrooms are located, you may need more than one smoke detector in the hallways. You should also have one in the common living area, like the family room. Now, if you have more than one floor, there should be at a minimum one on each level. Now, if all your bedrooms are upstairs, then one in the living room and one on the ceiling at the bottom of the stairs and one on the ceiling at the top of the stairs, in addition to any other units I already mentioned. Now, to determine what is actually required where you live, you can contact your local building department or local fire department for clarification. Now, some jurisdictions even have programs where they will come out and install smoke detectors free of charge. Now, check with your local fire department to see if there's such a program in your area. Now, some key points to remember. Don't remove a smoke detector without installing another in its place. If it's chirping in the middle of the night, change the battery the next day and reinstall it. Number 2, don't paint over smoke detectors. Also, don't cover up smoke detectors. And if you're replacing a hardwired unit, make sure to replace it with another hardwired unit, not a battery-powered one. And if your home is wired for interconnected smoke detectors, you must install and connect any new smoke detectors to be interconnected also. Also, test units regularly, preferably at least once a month. And if you lose that patent pending Waugers stick I mentioned, it makes it a lot easier. And last but not least, change the backup batteries at a minimum once per year. It's a good practice to also write the date on the battery when you installed it, so there's no confusion the next time whether or not you actually changed it out previously. Also, earlier I mentioned I would give you my 3 recommendations when installing smoke detectors, and they are: 1. Install combination ionization and photoelectric units in all bedrooms. They are the best protection. 2. Install a carbon monoxide detector on each floor, including basements if you have one. And 3. Make sure everyone in your household knows what the siren sounds like, and you not only have an exit path, but an area outside safely away from the house where everybody meets. Last thing you want to happen is everyone runs every which way when they get outside, and you don't know who got out and who didn't. And maybe you're thinking someone may still be inside, so you go and play hero and rush into a burning building to rescue someone that already got out. Or maybe a firefighter risks their life and goes in because you told them someone is still inside that really isn't. So remember, it's all about safety. So take your time, don't just do it right, but do it better. Now, thank you for watching. Your support is greatly appreciated by hitting that thumbs up like button and subscribing to my channel. Heck, it doesn't cost anything to subscribe, and I won't start chirping in the middle of the night like a low battery on a smoke detector. Now, it just says you like my content and would like to see more of it. And as a thank you, I supplied some more videos over here for your viewing pleasure, because I know you just can't get enough of this. So good luck with your projects, and I'll see you in the next one.